Namaste to all. When women can go to space, why can't women be the best money managers? Women in India has been taking huge strides in breaking through the glass ceilings in many industries. It's a major shift from managing households to managing businesses. However, the one area that's still seen as a male domain concerns is finances in general and investments in particular. To ensure financial independence, women need to be more confident while investing. A lack of confidence makes women their money's worst enemy. This is because we are not taught this important life skill neither through the formal education system nor it becomes a daily or a frequent dinner table conversation. Besides leading to obvious financial stress, it also leads to health and relationship issues at a personal level and productivity issues at work. Rising consumerism, rampant mis-selling, and easy availability of debt mixed with lack of understanding even at the basics makes a potent combination of some kind of failure. But of course, investing means different things to different women. With this, I, Ritusha, Knowledge Labs head, take this opportunity of welcoming one and all present here in today's session. A warm welcome to all our flow members, Pan India, and to our speakers. Thank you so much, dear friends, for taking out your precious time and joining us. I now kindly request our chairperson, Ms. Usha Rani Mane, to give her welcome address. Over to you, Usha.
Thank you, Ritu. Namaste. Special guest, Rita Valli, fellow chairpersons, past chairs, and my dear Pan-India Flow members. A recent study by investment research firm Morningstar revealed that number of women fund managers in India is growing steadily at a rate of 20 to 30% per year. Although the overall assets handled by them was just 15%, 52% of such assets performed better than the benchmark group over a one-year investment horizon. And yet, even today, the financial literacy gap between men and women in India is 8 points against a global average of 5 points. Yes, managing money in the midst of life's other priorities is no easy task. Women of all ages and backgrounds struggle with the pressure to earn enough, access education, care for a family, and plan retirement. But by taking the initiative to educate ourselves in this matter, will really help us make informed financial decisions that not only keeps us safe, but takes us closer to our goals. I welcome you all to this very informative and interesting session with finance mentor and co-founder of Pay It Forward Services, Rita Valli, wherein they will take us through the need, ways and means to keep our personal finances in the black. Thank you, Preeta, and her partners for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Usha.
Dear members, it brings me great pleasure to inform you that Flow Hyderabad is organizing Flow Influential Women Awards, FIVA, on March 7 at the heritage site of Chowmala Palace. It will be a gala evening of awards, entertainment, and more. Do mark your calendar and don't forget to register. In the month gone by, we organized a 2-day biz talk on sustainability in the fashion and jewelry industries as part of our collaborative tie-up with IIT Hyderabad. Taking Cheryl as the center of focus, we designed a 1-day cultural tourism circuit that we practically experienced. We are proposing the blueprint to the Ministry of Tourism, Government of Telangana. 34 members attended the 4 days, 3 nights annual retreat at Atmantan Wellness Resort near Pune. The melange of activities for mind, body, and soul was regenerating, to say the least, and we came away with a fragrant bouquet of fond memories. We also took the opportunity to take the Apna Desh Dekho pledge in keeping with the Prime Minister's vision to boost Indian tourism. The month concluded with a much needed tete-a-tete with the State Health Minister, Etal Rajender, and Mahima Datla of Biological E on what next, now that the COVID vaccines have been rolled out. The very insightful conversation allayed many common misapprehensions. Earlier this month, 21 members took off for the interstate meet at Baroda. I'm happy to announce that Hyderabad's was the largest contingent and also the most appreciated. On the social outreach front, encouraged by the 100% success rate of the first round, we mobilized 60 young women for the second round of free training cum placement program under central government's Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana that we are executing in collaboration with McLean Group. We also conducted another round of training in making natural pesticides and vermicompost for 30 women farmers of Sangiguda village in Shamshabad Mandal. I would like to thank our members Manisha Tibriwala, Simran Chabra, and Vandana Shetty for generously stepping forward to sponsor the 3 days workshop. Once again, a very cordial welcome to our speakers who so graciously accepted our invitation to join us here this afternoon. And happy learning to you all. Thank you so much. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you, Usha. We are a country of millennials, and while the vast majority is far more educated, technologically savvy, and ambitious than the previous generation, we are lacking in an area that our parents excelled in: money management. We live in a time where there is an overload of information versus lack of basic information, education about money, whether it is in schools or colleges. We tend to prioritize many other aspects of our lives, work, health, etc. But very few hardly give finance the due attention it requires. We find gender stereotypes around finance. Women tend to believe that they don't need to know or participate in financial decisions. They typically pass on the reins to their spouse, father, or even the financial advisor, and in times of adversity, find themselves in a tight spot. Even if they are investing, they go with traditional investments like home, gold, fixed deposits, and even a life insurance policy that is not suitable for them, only because an older person has advised them to do so. As we are improving in the quality of living, we need to equip ourselves with modern tools to handle modern challenges. Financial awareness is one such essential life skill. This workshop ensures that women take informed decisions and don't get misled by advisors or even family and friends. Our aim is to get women involved in a movement so that they can gain the confidence to handle their own hard-earned money. We have to understand the importance of saving as a habit. We will learn how to estimate our future expenses, set goals, and work towards it in a disciplined manner. Today, we have Ms. Preeta Vali amidst us. She is one of the co-founders of Pay It Forward. After doing journalism and mass communication in college, she has worked with CRY and Times of India and chanced upon learning personal finance. She is now an ardent trainer and proponent, trying to spread the message initially by teaching the subject for almost 6 years and now conducting workshops across Bangalore. Pay It Forward is about 3 women, Vinita Jain, Preeta Vali, and Anu Seth, who are passionate about changing mindsets, breaking myths, and imparting financial education in a totally unbiased and structured manner. It is a platform to educate, inspire, and encourage women and youth to be financially aware and actively participate in their personal financial decisions. Pay It Forward has been selected by IIM Bangalore for its All India WSP Bootcamp, recognized as one among 12 top emerging women startups with a unique idea by your story, recognized by Fikiflow as one of the top 100 All India women-based MSMEs. Now, I invite our chairperson, Usharani Mane, to initiate the discussion with Ms. Preeta Vali on how to manage our finances effectively and with ease. A reminder to all our viewers in the Zoom room to turn off your video and mute your audio feed for a better viewer experience. You can drop in your queries or doubts in the chat box through the session. We will take them up post the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhika. Hi, Preeta.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, culturally, financial planning, investments, when, how much, and what to spend are still pretty much in the male bastion. Not just in India, but across the world. The statistics are highly skewed in favor of the men when it comes to financial literacy. And most women, even highly educated and placed women, are happy to let things be. My first question to you is, why is it that most of us women hesitate to undertake the responsibility of our own financial planning?
Yeah, firstly, thanks, Usha, for inviting me to speak at the Hyderabad Flow chapter. This is a topic which is very passionate and very close to our heart. My 2 partners, Anu and Vinita, are also online. And the 3 of us started this entire organization with the idea to make it a movement, like Radhika was just mentioning, because of the very reason that you mentioned, which is that women don't tend to participate. And you cannot here blame just men in the sense that there are cases where women themselves hesitate for the reason that they think one is that typically it's been a male bastion. It's a male stereotype that men handle personal finance. And if you see the finance industry also is filled with a lot of men and a very small percentage of women, which is of course growing, like you mentioned about the study. Second thing is that I think somewhere we feel we already have so much that we handle, whether it's our jobs, our careers, our children, family, and so many other things. So we feel, why take on one more? That's what at least we got a response from some of our participants when we asked them, why don't you, participate in the personal finances of your family? The other thing we found is that women tend to say it's difficult. It's tough to understand. It's got a lot of numbers. In fact, I'll give you a very funny a story here. Is that I met one of the ISRO, one of the lady scientists who sent the rocket, the Chandrayaan, to space. So I met her and I was talking about my work, and I asked her, what do you do with your finances? So she said, I find it very difficult to understand. I hand it over to my husband. Then I said, you send rockets to space. How can it be more difficult than that? Because that's got so much more complexities around it. But then I guess it's just kind of ingrained into us that they will take care. So we think it is difficult. And just to give you all the comfort that me and Anu both are not from the finance background, but today we are teaching it. The simple reason is that we have Google today. If whatever information you need is there, you just need to know how to go about it, which is what I'll be taking you all through today. It's actually very simple. It is made complex because we feel it is a tough subject, but otherwise it's simple. So we started by simplifying the topic for people. And that's how we realized that, women are actually a little apprehensive about learning it. And of course, there are a lot of misconceptions that you need to know jargons and things like that. There's no such thing actually required at all. That's something which we noticed.
Yeah, Preeta, I agree with you. Convenience, division of labor, deep-rooted gender differences, and maybe underconfidence. I have seen all that come in the way of women, even thinking of managing their personal finances. I think now it is high time we changed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my next question is, which is why you should know, you should now tell us how important it is for women to understand the basics, at least of personal finance.
So there are a couple of angles, Usha. So I'll start with just any woman. Like you could be a working woman, or you could be a career woman, or a homemaker, anybody at all. One of the crucial things that we've noticed is that women, one is they think, finance is like something that someone else is handling, so everything is going fine. Second thing is also we find that because women are not aware of what is happening, many times they're the first ones in trouble if there's something which happens in the family, like say maybe there is a death or there is an illness, there is probably a dispute in the family. Today we know there are so many disputes in the family between parents and children, and brothers, siblings, and friends and partners and things like that. Second thing is that we found that women who are, say, entrepreneurs, for example, tend to start working on their passion, which is, it could be, maybe it is a making something, for example. Okay, but what we found is not being aware of the finances around a business, for the very same reasons that we spoke of why women don't want to understand finance. There are a lot of women who don't look at business beyond what they're trying to make a good product kind of thing, versus also saying, I need to look at my finances of my business too. All these factors are something which is what we'd like to address, saying that you can learn it, and it is an easy thing to go about. So there are various aspects to various kinds of women who are, but one positive thing I'd like to say, I mean, I've been saying, think a little negative stuff. The positive thing is the younger generation, actually, what we've noticed is younger generation of women are getting very much interested in, saving up or investing and trying to find avenues to, create wealth for themselves.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Preeta, as you rightly said, even I have personally witnessed at least a couple of instances where women in well-paying jobs were left helpless when things went wrong with their spouses. They had no clue where their monies were saved or invested, whether they had any contingency fund or insurance they could draw on. And that's why this next question is very important. What are the common mistakes that women make when it comes to household finance? How many are aware of the assets and liabilities, savings, and investments of the family?
Yes. So again, to say that when we ask people in our session saying how many of you know your household assets and liabilities, which is basically what is it that you own and what is it that you owe, very few people do know it, because again, going back to that whole male stereotype that the men are the ones who are handling it. So very few people are actually aware of their own domestic finances. This leads to problems of, say, a couple of things also. Say, for example, women's rights around finances. There are many women who don't know their rights around finances, which we will talk about a little later when I'd like to discuss with you about your rights as a nominee. Even something as simple as women don't know, say, for example, there are many women in India who don't know that if the partner is no more, the assets are equally divided between her and the children. It's not just the children. That's one of the very basic common mistakes which are there in made in India. And like you said about international, we've done thanks to COVID, I can say that because everything is now online, we've done webinars across the globe also, and we found this is true across the globe, where women, the same stereotypes that we spoke of. And second thing is women not being aware of their rights. What are my financial rights as a wife, as a daughter? Because there are a lot of cases where the brothers are cheating the sisters, or sisters don't even know it. So maybe even the brother also doesn't know. So it's not necessarily always cheating, but it's a lack of awareness. which is why a lot of people are just, finally suddenly waking up and going to court. So there are tons of cases in court today, family dispute, because women are not aware. The last one is where, because I don't know, say a woman doesn't know where their liabilities are. If the man is no more, the woman is in a lot of trouble because she doesn't know there's such a big debt, especially, for example, business families. If you see, I mean, we can take Nirav Modi as an example. I mean, there's a lot of money there, but there is still a problem, right? So it's not about how rich I am or how much money I am. It can be anything from, a you and me to someone who's extremely in the wealthy limelight celebrity kind of a thing. A lot of people who are unaware of it and they lose money because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not knowing makes us vulnerable, and financial vulnerability can be emotionally draining too.
Devastating, yeah.
Yeah. So, is it not important for every woman to have life insurance and health insurance? And statistics in our country show that far less women have insurance in comparison to the male numbers of their own family.
So, Usha, I'll start with one. I'll take it one step back and start with the fact that we all in India, there are a lot of myths and myths around personal finance in India between, be it man, woman. Actually, this would be a good question to throw to the audience. Can any of you put it on the chat box? Who teaches us personal finance? Anybody can just throw it in the chat box. Does anybody teach us personal finance actually? Actually, nobody does, right? No one teaches us. Even the men who are investing only based on, because they need to save tax, because it's their role to do and things like that. But nobody really teaches you personal finance. So why I'm taking it a step backwards is to say that, Lopa says experience. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of men go with experience. And in that process, what happens is they make a lot of mistakes also. We forget that. And just because we are not involved in it, we don't know how many mistakes the men could have made because nobody has taught them. Like Ritu in the intro was talking about how we are not taught the subject. We are not taught it either in the educational institutions or in at home. It's not a conversation. More so women. So how many times would a woman say, "Oh, I want to understand, money, and I want to take charge"? If you say that instantly, you might be put in a very negative category, right? So the point is saying that everybody needs to start at the right, place, which is one step before insurance. Also, I wanted to take you to saying we start like what you mentioned about an emergency fund. First is to protect yourself. So we say first start with the emergency fund. Insurance comes second. Because if you like today, COVID times, suddenly you had to go somewhere and get admitted in a hospital. And say, for example, the man of the household has got admitted in the hospital. If there wasn't an emergency fund and there was a time when you couldn't visit the person in the hospital, right? So how would you manage even your day-to-day expenses? How would you manage maybe the rents to pay, the school fees to pay? And you don't keep that much cash at home, right? So the point is to have an emergency fund, which typically we say earlier days, we used to say keep about 3 months of all your expenses somewhere tucked away in an FD or your savings account. But after COVID today, we are saying try and push it to 6, 8, 10 months or even 1 year if you can, because, there's so much uncertainty around. Second thing is we talk about insurance, saying that women especially we find are, like you mentioned rightly, statistics say women are very few women are insured in India, which is what we find very difficult to understand because everybody falls ill. From a child to an old person, everyone falls ill. It somehow becomes because the man in the household, and it is, of course, again, going back to the traditional thing of giving importance to the man in the household, the man's insurance is first taken care of. So we say take insurance. And second point in insurance is that there is a lot of mis-selling in insurance. I'm sure once I say this, a lot of you will probably relate to it. How many of us have bought LIC insurance from a neighbor in the building? We've bought LIC from somebody in our family, an uncle, an aunt, and somebody like that, right? I'm sure many of you would have bought insurance like that because you knew the person, not because you needed it. So a lot of us have life insurance. If I ask you today to put it in the chat box, I'm sure a lot of you will say you have life insurance. But the point is life insurance is only if you have dependents. It is not for everybody. But because we have been hearing life insurance corporation for a long time through our childhood and all, we prioritize that first. Life insurance is not for everyone. It is only if you have dependents. There's nothing wrong in taking it, but the priority, if you don't have dependents, is health insurance, because anybody falls ill. Like pre-COVID, one of the things we used to say is that dengue, for example, it could be rich, poor. We all know Yash Chopra died of dengue. He had all the money in the world, but it couldn't save. Health affects everybody. While as life insurance is only for protecting the people who you leave behind, who are dependent on your income. So first step is that life insurance should be remembered is for that. Health insurance everybody needs to take, but sadly women don't take. But I must give you one statistic. Is India's couple of statistics, in fact, is the cancer capital right now, especially breast cancer is growing in India. Second thing is we are the diabetes capital of the world. We have a lot of stress, especially women. I don't know if you all remember a few years ago, there was statistics which came out saying Indian women are the most stressed women in the world. And stress, as we all by now know, that it leads to so many other health issues. So health insurance is a must for women. And when you're taking health insurance, again, going back to the fact that this is personal finance, it is not to be driven by either the fact that you're trying to, earn a lot of money out of it. A lot of people say that it's an investment. It's not an investment. It is because you're insuring yourself that there will be a health expense. Let me take care of that. Beforehand, I am putting aside some money because I could be in some trouble. That's more the reason why. And when you're taking health insurance, you need to have a look at what is it you require. Do you have some genetic issues? Like I brought up about cancer. I must give you this example. My mother was recently diagnosed with cancer, but we don't have cancer in the family at all. So today, anybody can, have anything because largely stress related, pollution, lifestyles. There's so many changes, right, in our thing. So women need to take health insurance too, but ensure that they're taking the right form of insurance. Yeah, Usha. And health insurance for the entire family, incidentally, Usha.
Okay, yeah. Actually, 2019 study revealed that the share of women in terms of number of policies is only just 36%. But the heartening fact is that there is a year-on-year rising trend in these figures. That is, that's very good sign. And now my next question is, most women are not aware of their rights under the Hindu Succession Act or property inheritance provisions provided by the law. And not just women, even men seldom write a will in India. How important is it for us to do it?
So one of the things that we speak of is saying that the importance of writing a will is important even for women. Let's take a small example. Like women typically say, if I'm a homemaker, I'll say I'm not earning, so why do I need to write a will? But we forget that the gold, especially that we have in our cupboards, could be worth lakhs, right? Today's gold prices are so high that what we have is worth lakhs or probably even crores. So that itself is enough reason for you to understand that we do have something in our names. Second thing is you're likely to inherit something from your parents or somebody else in the family. You are likely to have other forms of investments which husband might have taken jointly, say for example, a house. Who do you want to pass it on to should be your choice, right? If you do not write a will, it goes as per the Succession Act of the religion. I'll give you another, a little, this is something which always gets people a little, active during our session is when we say, I'll ask a question, if some of you can throw the answer, saying, supposing there is a couple and they have no children, the couple dies, say, for example, in a road accident. They don't have children. Who inherits what belongs to the woman who died? Anybody can tell us this? I hope, if there's a lawyer, please don't answer, but the rest of you can answer. Who would inherit the property of the assets of a woman if the woman does not have children? And both of them are die in, say, a road accident, for example. Anybody wants to, I think, can unmute and say also? Bela says sibling. anyone else wants to say? Okay, so let me just, yeah, Ritu, you want to say?
Is it maybe living parents or in-laws? If no children and no siblings, then
Yeah, so it's
Legal
in-laws.
rights? Legal rights?
Not the yeah. So yeah, so there are class one heirs and all that. So the first one is to inherit will be in-laws. So what happens is that we as women, we always think, I mean, not, this is not nothing to do with, speaking against in-laws, but this is more to do with saying, hey, my father gave me some property. Typically, it's his hard-earned money. So I would like, if I'm no more, I would like it to go back to him if I don't have children, right? Ideally, that's what I would want because it's my father's. But the law doesn't permit that. It says it has to go to my in-laws. Now that sounds very unfair to us, but there is a way to, sidestep that, which is by writing a will. So there are a few such legal, you can say legal aspects which we as women might not find it good. Second thing is even for men, for example, saying that, why would a man not write a will, especially say, for example, I've got two sons. What stops my two sons from fighting after I'm no more? Right? If I have not written down a will, then there is a possibility of anybody in the family disputing it. Maybe my uncle gave me some money. He will say, I am entitled to this. Somebody else gave me something. So writing a will today is so easy that today all of you can sit here and write a will. It's that easy. So earlier we used to think, you have to write a will, then put it on a stamp paper, then call the lawyer, go to the registrar office. None of that is actually required. It's as simple as sitting here and writing a will, putting down all the assets, like say I've got two children. So I say XYZ goes to one son, XYZ goes to the other son. This can go to somebody else, that can go to somebody else. I can put that down. And if I'm expecting a dispute in the family, best is to go get it registered. So anybody can write a will. Second thing is, for a lot of us in India have the, what is the nominee is something a lot of us have it totally wrong. Men, women, everybody's got it wrong. Typically, people think nominee, say, supposing I say, Usha, you're the nominee. You would think that means my asset, say you're a nominee in my FD. You would think that means I'm giving the asset to you. In fact, even I think I'm giving the asset to you, but law doesn't say that. Law says that a nominee is a person who's only a custodian. That's again another big area of dispute, because typically the nominee's name is of one person, but the money has to be distributed to the legal heirs. So that's another area women find, that they get stuck with it because they don't know also. See, if you don't know the assets, supposing you don't know someone's husband, the husband has not informed the family where he's kept, he's put money in mutual funds, he's put money in FDs, but he's not informed. He's put maybe the wife as the nominee, but he's not informed the wife. The children maybe don't know. There are crores of rupees lying today with the industry just because people don't know. And second is there is a dispute because people think my name is there, so that money belongs to me. Okay, so it is important for you to understand that the nominee, who is a nominee, and that's something 95% of people get wrong. So please go back and check whether you've got your nominees written. Yes, you can. There is an age limit, which is 18 years, Vandana. 18 years and above are the ones who can write a will, basically. Ideally, get a lawyer to sign on it. So all these is to prevent further, legal issues from getting more and more complicated. But you can still just write a will on a piece of paper, putting all the necessary details, taking two people as witnesses that, you were totally fine and no one forced you to write the will. That's about it takes to write a will. So it's important for everyone, including youngsters, also to write a will. In fact, in our sessions, when we do for 20-year-olds, we say you might own a bike. Today, you just started earning when you're 22, 23, and you might have bought a bike. And maybe if I'm no more, I want that bike to go to my brother, my sister, my whoever. So why not just put it down and say, pass it on to the person that I want to pass it on to?
Yeah. So, it is indeed up to us now to educate ourselves, and insist on being treated right. So if a woman, I got it out here. If a woman is a nominee in her husband's account, does it mean she will inherit the assets?
not only she, if there are other legal heirs, the children are the other ones who get it. So a husband's assets are equally distributed between the wife and the kids. So say even if the child's name is there as a nominee, like my son's name is there, it still has to go to the other two.
Wife and both children.
That's where it goes to all three of them without any dispute, and no one can dispute it, is life insurance policies, because that is meant for the family.
Okay. Even if we write nominee as the wife or husband or anything.
Yeah. So life insurance, you're allowed to write only wife and children's names. You're not allowed to write other people's names, unless you have a very strong reason why you have to tell them why you are writing somebody else's name. So while I might tell you a couple of these points, because we are short of time, there's not so much I can tell you all the points around an insurance or an nominee or will. There are a few legal aspects to it. And like I said, this is personal finance, so it's very personal. So anything which I've said, I've given you the basic of it. Do go back and check, read up. There's our dear old Google, which is there to help us out. There are some good websites. If all of you want, at the end, I can mention the websites also, where you can read without putting in your details, and you can get more information from that. And also then be more clear on certain aspects of it. There are many people today who are very keen on helping out, lay investors. So if you write to them, they'll also help you help answer your questions too. I can tell you the places.
It's really very important information, Preeta. Generally, we tend to take so many things for granted. And I always thought that a nomination is enough for women to stake their claim. I think this is very important information. And you have
that, Usha. So there is also something called, which we talk of in our session. So I'd like to speak about it, since this is a all women forum. There's something called Stridhan. I'm sure most of you know Stridhan. But the point is that Stridhan, unlike dowry, of course, Stridhan is something that belongs to a woman. And why I want to bring this up is every woman, whatever she gets for herself, pre-marriage, during marriage, post-marriage, whatever it is, all belongs to her. In the senses, there are many families where what happens is that maybe because there is a business reason, so my father has given me some gold, then my husband says, I'm taking it for my business and things like that. Then there is a dispute and there are issues and things like that. So to prevent all that and to protect the woman, what law says is what comes under Stridhan, not under dowry, what comes under Stridhan. If you put it down on a paper, and you do have, even ideally, if you can have some proof, for example, the more proof you have, the more steps you have followed, the less easier it is for someone to dispute it, right? So if you keep these in place properly, nobody can deprive you of them as per law. So Stridhan is something which is there to protect the women. So it's something that all of us, I think, should be very aware of, especially probably more the newly married or to be married youngsters. So maybe there's a good thing to share with the daughters and younger sisters or younger siblings in the family.
Yeah.
I'll just ask the question, Usha. Before writing a will, we should have all details that belong to us. Yeah, Archana. So one of the nice things about writing a will, in fact, Usha, I should say this, it's like an inventory it becomes. So I've got, say, 5 necklaces, I've got 10 earrings, I've got 1 FD, 5 mutual funds, all are here, like that, right? So when I'm writing a will, actually, I will put mutual fund 1, mutual fund 2, mutual fund 3, this earring, then this earring, then, things like that, this finger ring. So it kind of gives you a good opportunity to write it down as a inventory of your assets also. So that's actually, Archana, is a good question that you asked. It actually helps us put things down and have it on paper, because we know something is here, something is there, kind of a thing. So it just puts everything, streamlines everything, basically.
Yeah, Preeta, you have really cleverly established the case for women to handle their personal finances. So where does one start and how should one go about it?
Okay, so like I said, first is ensure that you have that emergency fund. So we say investing is the second step. First step is to protect what you have. So part of protection is even the will writing is also part of protection, of course. First is the emergency fund. Second is saying that do I have adequate insurance? Like, in fact, I must tell you that post-COVID, the number of people who are coming to us to ask us about insurance is way more than people pre-COVID, because no one thought so seriously about the illness unless there was some history in the family. But today you're thinking about death and illness and, protecting my family kind of a thing. So a lot of people are coming for insurance. So second is insurance. And like I said, insurance is not an investment. Life insurance only if you have dependents, health insurance for everybody in the family, however young or old. In fact, I must take this example, most recent example, SP Balasubramaniam, we all know, passed away recently of COVID. The hospital bill was more than 3 crores apparently, because he was there for 1.5 months. So the expenses were quite high. And of course, there is a lot of articles written about how that got settled. But just imagine someone as, such a big celebrity like him had struggled about insurance. Why would you and me, get away very easily, right? So we need to think of insurance. That's the second step. Third step we speak of is saying, let me just show you one slide here, Usha. This slide probably will kind of put things in perspective for people. I had the entire presentation, but I think I'll just skip that and I'll just show you this particular slide. I'd like you all to see the slide for the simple reason is that this is how our life. So why I'm showing you this slide is I'd like you to see the fact that all of us from 20s to it could be 90 plus also, we know there are certain life stages, especially for women. It's a little more clear because there is a time you might get married. There's a time you might have children, maybe 1, maybe 2 or more. There is a time when for retirement. Then there is a time when you might take a break because you're between your 30s and 40s when you're trying to have children. You might have to take a break between your 40s and 50s to take care of an aging parent, aging in-laws, or something in the family. So there are various life stages that we have, right? This is the first thought that should be there in your head. Instead of first saying, let me try and save tax, let me try and invest because someone said X amount of returns I'm getting. The first thing is for you to look at your life like this, saying, I have 20 to 90 years to live. So now what do I have to do with it? So let me start by breaking it down into short term, medium term, and long term. So short term, like I've written it down for you, is 1 to 3 years, medium is 3 to 5, and long term is 5 plus or 7 plus. So the point is, when you look at it like this, you realize that it's not like, it's not, one size fits all. It's not like the same thing for you and me, because for you might want to retire at 50. I might want to retire at 60. Maybe you have 2 children. Maybe I don't have children. You might have parents to take care of and in-laws. I might not have. So when you put it like this, it puts in perspective. At 30, how much money do you need? At 40, what all other expenses you'll have? At 50, what expenses? And one most important thing I should tell you all, especially for women, is we all don't plan for our retirement, right? So for us, 60, if we are working or not working, we are saying 60 is retirement. And then the husband is planning for it. But what about us? And I'll tell you why I'm bringing this up is that women outlive men statistically by 5 years, but it can be much more. So, which means that say at 70, if the husband is no more, there is every possibility that the woman can live to be 90, 95 or even 100 today. If you see, thanks to good healthcare and all, we are living up to 100 also today, right? So the point is saying that at 70, 80, if I don't understand my personal finances and I don't know whether I have enough money, I'm going to become dependent on children or brother or whoever else is around. Maybe I don't have children, I don't have siblings. I have to take care of myself when I'm 70. So if you look at it like that, you will understand how important retirement is actually more for women than men because of the life expectancy. Second thing is that to keep in mind that India is a growing country, we've got inflation. So just to throw one question to all of you is that inflation today in India is about 7 to 8% is what the headlines tell you, right? But actually, if you look at our expenses, Say, I'll just ask you a question now, Usha. I'll tell you why I'm bringing in inflation here. Actually, I should have mentioned it earlier, but I'll just tell you why it's important for you to, when you're planning, since you asked about planning, why you need to think about inflation. Say, for example, we are all spending 30,000 a month on our household expenses. Okay. So 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, how much do you think that 30,000 will become? With no changes, let's assume we are just going to be spending only 30,000. Okay. So 10 years later, how much will I spend? With the inflation rate of 7%, how much will it become? Anybody can guess that?
50,000?
More than a lakh, probably.
10 years later?
50,000?
Yeah, Usha. 20 years later?
Yeah, more than a lakh.
And 30 years later? That's how much you'll be spending every month. Just because of the inflation number, which is 6 to 7% is what, or 6 to 8% is what the newspapers say. But let me ask you one more question. What do you think the inflation is in education? So there is inflation everywhere. There's a healthcare inflation, there's an education inflation, there's a dating inflation, there is lifestyle inflation, there is inflation for everything, which is way, way, way beyond what you see in the papers, which is 6% or 7%. So can anyone guess what is healthcare inflation or education inflation?
100%.
Okay. It's everything is way above 15%. So the reason why I brought it up is saying when you're calculating for your goals, say for example, healthcare, when we take insurance, we are taking insurance for the long term. We are not taking it for tomorrow, right? So say 5 years later, I'm expecting, I'm 25, 30 right now, and I'm expecting that 5 years later or 10 years later is when, you know, I might start developing, say, diabetes, which is there in my family, for example. I have to account for inflation, right? Saying my expense for diabetes could be, say, 1 lakh, for example. If I take insurance for 1 lakh today, saying my expense 10 years later will be 1 lakh, I'm going to be falling very short of it and having to dig into all my savings and my gold, selling my gold and all, because that 1 lakh at 15% inflation, 20% inflation, 10 years later can become 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, right? So keeping that in mind, second is you put your goals down, put the inflation number down. Say, for example, if you're trying to put down saying my child's education, my child is going to go to college 10 years later. So how much do I want to spend? Maybe I want to spend 1 crore. I need to spend 1 crore on the child. I start planning backwards, saying education inflation is 10, 15. It can be 20, 25% also if our child wants to go abroad, wants to study in international schools. Everything is today so expensive, right? So keep the inflation figure in mind, keep the time frame in mind, keep the amount in mind, and then plan. So there again, you have various types of investments. You can't put your money in FDs for a long-term planning. Similarly, you need to break it down like that. So I'm kind of rushing through it, but this is not how. What we do is in our workshops, we take it through in a more systematic way, Usha, where we talk about for 1 to 3 years, this is where you can put your money. For 3 to 5 years, this is where, which is basically medium term. So this is where you put your money. For 5 to 7 years, this is where you put your money. The point being that it's not, putting all eggs in one basket, or it is not saying every investment is valid for a long period. Like, for example, FD is always for the short term when you want it for an emergency fund, or you need money 1 year later. But you cannot say that, I will put for 10 years later, I will put money in an FD. You'll be losing money, in fact. That's a surprising part, which many people find, because inflation eats up your money. So basically, define your goal and put your money in the right instrument to fit the time frame that you have. So that's where you would start. And that's rushing through it, but I can just probably show you this slide this is again a slide which we show in our sessions. Just to, this is a very simplified slide. Anu and Vinita explained the slide in detail in our sessions. But I'm just showing this to you to show that there are various types of assets. There are various each asset has a different purpose. So don't look at it as saying that one thing fits everything. It's not like that at all. And that's where we go terribly wrong in our investments.
Yeah, I mean, the way you have put it, it doesn't seem too difficult, but one step at a time is always a good way to achieve the goal. Ladies, hope you are getting the message loud and clear. Now, my next question is, most women here are solopreneurs, professionals, or working with family businesses. Can you share a few points that we need to know about finances and things that are typically ignored or put aside for later?
So when it comes to entrepreneurs, one is, of course, we are also entrepreneurs. Usha, Vinita, me and Anu are entrepreneurs. One of the things we realized is, because we are in this field of finances, I think we realized it much faster, is it's very important for entrepreneurs to understand some basics around accounting, some basics around a balance sheet and a PL account, some basics around where your money comes, where is it going, some basics around a long and a short-term plan. There's no taking away from the fact that everything needs to be put into perspective of a short, medium, and long-term plan, even for entrepreneurs. Understanding basics of accounting means a couple of things, where how much money you need to put into the business, how much money will go out for. There are so many expense heads, right? There can be wages, your offices, auditor fees, electricity bills, so many expenses. So say X amount is my expense. What is my income? Is it equivalent? Is it more? Am I falling short? Do I take a loan, which means there is an interest cost in it? These are actually very simple things to understand. Understanding a balance sheet actually is not very difficult if you go beyond the jargons. It's just like looking at your home budget. What comes in, what goes out, as simple as that. And that's a big mistake we notice that women make, is that they don't, because they're so passionate about what we want to do. As an entrepreneur, say I'm making jewelry, for example, or I'm making, some industrial product. I'm so passionate about making that. That is my area of interest, that I pass this on to somebody else. You might have a professional there, but at the end of it, it's your money. It is equity that you brought into the company. It's important for you to know some basics around it. So before you start a business, or even if you already started it, it's very easy to understand balance sheet. So please, first step is understanding basics of accounting. Next is to plan it short, medium, and long term, and then see where money, budgeting, for example, all of us do at home. It's as simple as that. I think that's the same thing, almost similar thing in business, not really the same. So that would be my suggestion to the women entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Preeta, and for this really eye-opening session. And it has been an hour of revelations. As I see, it's not lack of financial education, but a lack of confidence that holds us women back when it comes to taking charge of our financial lives. Even as we contribute to the family's financial goals, there's nothing wrong in setting aside something for ourselves in case of an unforeseen eventuality. But first, let's start by participating in the financial planning and decision making of our family. Now, I'll give it to my friend Radhika Agarwal to handle the question and answers from the audience. Radhika, please take over. You have to.
Yeah, 1 minute. There is some problem with my system.
Okay.
Yeah. Khushbu, can you just start the questions? I'll take it over. Khushbu?
Or otherwise, I think there are many questions in the chat box.
Right. Actually, the thing is, my system got disconnected. I need a minute to connect. So the questions are not coming. I need a minute, Usha.
Okay.
Shilpa, can you just start with the question? First question. Shilpa or Ritu?
Shall I just go through the questions and answer them, Radhika?
Yeah, that would be really nice.
Yeah, Shilpa is
The
on the
first question I would like to ask, as Prachi had put across, what is actually Stridhan? Can you elaborate on that?
So, like I said, Sridhan is basically anything that is given to the woman pre, during, and post marriage. So, say for example, it could even be something like a phone given by a parent. It could be some jewelry. It could be a house. It could be like, say for example, when the child is born, parents tend to give something for the children, for the newborn as well as the mother, right? So even that is part of Sridhan. So anything which is given to you by even a friend, for example, all that falls under Sridhan. Where if you maintain a kind of, you can say a diary of it or an account of it, saying this is what came as Sridhan. And ideally, like if you can have a proof of it in the form of, like we take a lot of pictures nowadays, so someone is handing it over to you, or a bill that it has been given to you, or even a gift deed or whatever. Any of this that you can prove that it is actually yours will help it stay with you, instead of, say for example, in the case of a divorce, how do you divide the stuff? Even if there is a divorce, the Sridhan belongs to the woman, unlike a. So I would suggest, if you can all go and read, it's very easily, simple language is written in, like I said, I will tell you the websites in a little while where you can read. So it gives more in-depth detail there. So I have given it to you in a very basic, simple format.
In case of divorce, how do we handle that?
So it's basically, like I said, as long as it is yours and you can prove that it is yours, you can prove that it is Sridhan and not dowry. So there are, like I said, two things in India. We have the system of dowry, where dowry is basically given to the man and his family, while as Sridhan is what is yours. So if your parents say, I gave these X amount of this amount of jewelry to my daughter, and you have it noted somewhere, and they can vouch for it, and there are many ways of going about it depending individual situation. It's all yours. What is yours is yours. It's as simple as that.
So is a gift from husband considered as Sridhan, as Jyoti Reddy wanted to know about this?
I'm not too sure. I think it changes as per. So there are things like property and things like that, which could be a little different. So it's again individual thing. So I would suggest you read about that, because it's entering a legal territory where I don't want to answer the question, because I'm not a lawyer, and then I don't want to give the wrong answer, because it has various categories to it also when it comes to the husband.
So Deepa Shah also wants to know if Sridhan have to be at time of marriage only, or even after a few years?
Pre, post, and during. Pre-marriage, during marriage, post-marriage. So pre-marriage, typically it's parents, right, who give something like jewelry and things like that. So that can also come under Sridhan.
Okay, and I think one more person wanted to know about the nominees of Provident Fund, Public Provident Fund, Monica Bandola.
See, for an EPF, which is basically your employee provident fund, whoever the nominee you mentioned, that's the person who gets it, which is why, again, you should be careful who you're nominating. While as for the rest of the assets, it's all to be passed on to the legal heirs.
And if inheritance, a will is not written, how does it get distributed among the husband and children?
Yeah, so if there is no will, it goes as per the succession law of that particular religion. So if I'm a Christian, it goes as per the Christian law. So there are succession laws for each religion. It goes as per that religion's succession law.
Okay, and Khushbu Baid wants to know what is the difference between dowry and Sridhan?
So dowry, like I said, is typically what you give the man and his family. And Sridhan is what is yours, what the woman gets. So that's why if you can maintain the records from day one, see, none of us get into marriage thinking, something will happen, right? But it's always good. It's like insurance. We always say, you want to take life insurance not because you're sure you're going to die. I mean, all of us will die one day, but not that we're expecting to die soon or something, but it's more a precautionary thing. So similarly, we say that it's better to be safer in the beginning. Even when we talk about, having joint accounts and single accounts, have a joint account for regular joint expenses, but definitely have a single account also. Why would you not want to be independent? Right? So there is something in your name, there is something in a joint name. That's something a lot of women, like in the beginning, like there's a lawyer who told us, everything is all kuchi-kui and good and romantic and things like that. That's when you don't really expect anything to go wrong. When in your early years of marriage, first, second years of marriage, probably, or even pre-marriage. But things could go wrong. And nowadays, there are a lot of small issues which crop up because of finance, actually.
Okay, so we have a next question from Meena Goel. What is realistic inflation rate for next 10 years? Will interest rate continue to reduce?
Okay, so the headline inflation, like I said, that the papers are showing are about 7 to 8%. And headline inflation takes into account everything around the country. So that's one point. Second point to remember is we also, like say you and me, all members of Flow, are all from a certain category, socioeconomic background. We are from a certain socioeconomic background where we spend in a certain way. So we have our own lifestyle inflation also. Not to, like say today, if I have a Maruti or whatever, tomorrow I want to probably buy a Honda or whatever the next thing is. Today I have a two-wheeler, I want to upgrade, right? No one wants to downgrade. So your inflation, you have to remember that inflation, besides what you're seeing in the papers, second thing is also how you spend. So the fact that we tend to spend, upgrade our lifestyle constantly adds to our inflation price. The third thing is we all are in cities. Cities are much more expensive. So this 6 to 7 or 8% that you see in the papers is all India. And we know the number of, 70% of India is in villages or tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. So it doesn't really capture the picture for you and me as broadly. So inflation over the next few years, India being a growing economy, can go up. It had touched, I think, 14% a few years ago. And there are many countries like Venezuela, it's in thousands today. If I'm not mistaken, it's 65,000 or something inflation. I mean, there is a possibility of India hitting 12, 13% also as we are growing.
Okay, so now we have a next question from Prachi Trivedi Shah. She wants to know whether Sridhan requires a nominee.
So Sridhan is not really a legal document in that sense, actually, Radhika. So, Prachi, rather. Sridhan is more a record of what you have. So, nominee is something which you do for assets of your financial assets, which you have like mutual funds and FD. More importantly, that will becomes more important. Then you don't need a Sridhan, you don't need to worry about nominee, because will supersedes a nominee also. Say, for example, if I write that my older son is the nominee for my FD, for example. But in the will I write the FD goes to my younger son and my older son. The will supersedes that nomination. So that's why, again, another reason why it is important for women to write wills, because it supersedes anything else. Anything else anybody else can bring up as a kind of issue or whatever, will supersede that.
So we have one query from Swati Soma, Preeta. She is asking, FD is in long term, if you're saying we are losing money, then what is the alternate you would suggest, especially for an NGO with a corpus fund of 20 lakhs?
Swati, I think maybe we can chat about this later, because this requires a little longer explanation. FD losing money, I mean, putting in FD for long term is losing money and all. I'd like to explain that and not give a short answer. So Swati, I can give you my phone number, or my email ID is there with you, Radhika. You can share it probably. Any of you welcome to reach out to me even after the session. Most welcome.
So we have our next query from Archana Goel. She wants to know that should we talk to a lawyer for writing the will?
You don't need to, but it's a good idea too. So it's like this, Radhika, saying that like I said, I can right now, as I'm talking to you, I can sit and write my will. Then I can get two people who are not part of my will to come and sign the paper, just to say that I was not under pressure and I'm mentally fine. So I finished writing the will, but maybe I have a doubt that uncle or that cousin or somebody might dispute it, might have a problem with this, might have a problem with that. So let me just take it to the registrar and get the will attested. That adds one more step of protecting your assets. Third one is to have a lawyer around is a good idea always. One of the signatory, in fact, is a lawyer. It's always a good idea, because then nobody will, so when you know that there's just somebody who signed the paper versus, there's a lawyer who signed the paper, whoever's planning to dispute also will think twice, right? So these are all steps to protect it. Definitely you can have, but it's not necessary.
Okay, we have our next question from Jyoti Reddy. She wants to know, are there any special investments, bonds that favor women in any way?
So there are certain things which give you a little extra percentage if you're a senior citizen, if you have girl children, like that Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, which was introduced by the government. There are a few things like that for sure. Yeah. So this needs a little more explanation as to for what is it that you're looking at. Depending on that, like say even banks give you a little percentage lesser interest. Charge you a little lesser interest if you're a woman looking for the loan. So that's why they tell men, take it along with your wife, take the loan in the joint name.
So our next member, Shilpa Raju, wants to know, how does guardianship or financial custody work for children in case of parents' death?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah. How does guardianship or financial custody work for children in case of parents' death?
If they're minors, then they will obviously be, the guardians who could be if you have a will again, you've written in that, say, supposing I've got a 5-year-old or 6-year-old or something, and I write my will, I put that put it in the will, saying that till my child is 18, so and so will be the guardian and things like that. But if it is an older child, you could, that it goes as per the Succession Act again.
Yeah, I think we have one last query from Lopa. She wants to know, is it mandatory to register a will for it to be valid?
No, it's not mandatory. Like I said, it is a good idea to do it for the reason that, especially if you're expecting disputes in the family. And one more thing is that even banks and financial institutions, if there is a dispute, then they will prefer a registered will. So unless there is a dispute, that's the main thing. But the thing is why I'm not pushing for that is when you put one step like that, a lot of people tend to say, oh, I have to go and register, it's such a big headache and things like that. That's secondary step. So don't think of that at all. First, put it down on even a white paper. You don't even need to type it. And today, in fact, there are a lot of e-wills which you can write, which is online. Some of our banks and other financial institutions offer it.
There is one more question from Ritu Shah. She wants to know, is there any age limit to write a will?
In fact, that question prompts me for saying two other points which I wanted to say, Radhika, is that one is absolutely no age limit, 18 plus, anybody can write a will. Second thing is, do see if you can in some way convince your seniors in the family to write a will. Because we don't realize it, but I'm again another example of this, that I thought we were a nice, happy family till, someone in the family passed away, and then people started, wondering whether they are the inheritors. Then there is that misconception around nominees, so then it becomes a legal issue. So it is better to have a will, everybody, especially if you can tell the seniors. Second thing is, if you can also pass on all of you information to the seniors in your family, that today everything is digital. Two things is, one is online digital scams with seniors is on the rise very seriously. Second thing is, even a senior who has a certain decently large amount of money in the bank, gets conned by the bank people itself, or by the relationship manager, or somebody in the bank itself who will come and say, put your money here, put your money there. That's why I was talking about you seeing what age you are in and what investment suits your age and your goal. It's not like everybody can go and put into mutual funds or equities and things like that. So don't let other people con the seniors in your family either. And that's happening rampantly. That's why I'm very keen on mentioning that in every session, that seniors are getting losing money because of scamming or mis-selling.
So we have one more question from Jyoti Kanuri. She wants to know what are the most compelling reasons, apart from adversities, that previously reluctant women who have now they have decided to invest or take charge of the finances.
One is awareness also, Jyoti. Second thing, one is, of course, awareness. Second thing is, I think Google also has helped people to know that if I don't know, I can just Google things. You know, so earlier there was very few avenues for us to know, right? Today, the other thing is we found that many people, youngsters also being very keen on this because they're working. So they are saying, you know, I want to travel, I want to have certain experiences and things like that, which I cannot. And the need to be independent. Who doesn't want to be financially independent, right? All of us want to have our own money. We don't want to keep asking either a husband or a father or whoever else. So that need for financial independence and wanting my money is one of the reasons which I think youngsters are keen on. And my son is just 21, but he's already talking about being financially independent. And then I have to tell him, listen, inflation, it's very expensive, so be careful and things like that. So yeah, reasons.
Yes. Sarika Burgu wants to know, is will registration compulsory?
No, Sarika, it's not compulsory, but it's a good idea to do it. And I think Ritu had asked whether it is what happens to assets after you write the will. So you can always add the assets. Even if you've gone to the sub-registrar's office and got it attested, you can always add to it and get it reattested again. And again, you can need those two people to sign the thing. So there are times we sell something, we buy something. So I've got 5 mutual funds. I've written my will, but next year, maybe I want to sell off one mutual fund. So now I have only 4. So I just alter the will. So altering the will is not difficult at all.
So would you suggest some investments that we should be making for a short term, 1 year, 2 year thing, if you think it is right?
Okay, like I put my first disclaimer slide, we don't do advisory. So we are one of the, in fact, as far as we know, we are the only company, organization in India who does purely educational without advising. Because what we found is that if I'm advising you, there will be some conflict of interest, right? So if I'm from, say, the mutual fund industry and I'm advising you, obviously my tilt will be towards mutual funds. But you might actually be the person who needs a lot of insurance right now. That's a possibility, right? So things like that. So we stay clearly away from advising. But I must say that we do these sessions, Usha, we can definitely look at doing a proper workshop where we take you through the entire process over, about 3 hours, 1.5 hour, 1.5 hour is what we break it into. And we explain all this in much more detail. So if all of you are keen, you could probably tell Usha, and Usha can reach out to me. We'll be more than happy to reach out.
Sure, Preeta. And I have one more question. See, can you throw some light on usage of credit cards?
I'm glad you asked the question, Usha. In fact, so credit card, we say, so we've got this thing where we show, in fact, one of the slides that we show is where we're talking about loans. So the great Indian dream of owning a home also is not necessarily a good idea for everybody. In a similar way, we talk about credit cards, where especially youngsters today have 2, 3, 4 credit cards when they're not earning as much. Now, what happens with credit card usage is that we have something called minimum amount due, which is on the card in the statement. What we all tend to do, this is again something you should share with the youngsters, is that we tend to pay that minimum amount and we are like happy that we've paid the minimum amount. But actually, minimum amount due just means that it is letting you continue to use your card next month. It does not mean that your interest rate has stopped. So say, for example, you spent for 1,000 rupees, minimum amount is 300 rupees, you've paid it. that 700 is still carrying interest. Now I'm taking a small figure, but imagine many of us sometimes swipe 50, 60, 70,000 on cards or even more than a lakh on a card, right? So say you pay the minimum amount, look at the amount of interest you'll pay. And the second thing is if you don't pay interest, this is interest on interest goes on your card. And one of the big mistakes which Indians make is thinking paying minimum amount is enough. That is one. Second thing is anytime that you take a loan, and credit card is the biggest culprit I can say today, is if you don't pay up properly, you delay paying, you have probably overspent on your card. Many reasons why. It's a digital world. Anywhere you swipe your card, people, all financial institutions know there is something called a CIBIL score. I'm sure some of you are aware of it. CIBIL score is a score given every time that you take a loan. Credit card is a loan finally, right? It's not our money. We are borrowing it from the bank to spend. Every time you take a loan and you default on it, they are usually, tracking your payment, and hence that score, if it is not good. So today my score is not good. Anything below 700 is not very great. Okay, 700 is the good score and above. Anything below 700, I go to the bank, say for taking a home loan, for example. I have not paid my credit card bills 4-5 times. I've defaulted on my credit card bills, and tomorrow I'm going to take a home loan. Normally for you, they might give you at 10% interest, but for me, they might make it 10.5% because they've seen my CIBIL score is not good. Or it could be even 11% if my CIBIL score is really bad, because they're worried of whether I will be able to pay it back. If I can't pay back a credit card payment, can I pay back a home loan amount? That's the basic.
If suppose we are regular in making our payments, is it advisable to use credit card? And I have one more question. I have debit card and credit card both. If suppose I want to do a transaction, which is the preferred one to do? I'm very regular in making credit card payments. So what would be your suggestion?
Okay, so Vinita and I used to have this discussion earlier quite a bit actually. I'm not sure if Vinita is still online, but yeah, so I use a debit card. Vinita uses a credit card, but this is again personal. It's not good or bad. As long as you can pay back your credit card bills on time. And more importantly, you can be disciplined about your spending habits having a credit card. Because many times in our heads, credit card is never seen as a loan. Credit card is usually seen as my money. It's not my money because I don't have it, right? The bank is giving it at an interest. If I delay, I have to pay an interest. While as debit card is my money. So when I know it is my money, I tend to, be more careful when I swipe it, unless I'm a disciplined person. Like you said, you pay up on time, but most people don't, Usha. Most people do only that minimum balance payment. They don't pay the whole amount on time. And youngsters especially. Oh. Debit card, I would suggest debit card also because for me, I do this thing of credit card is for emergencies. Debit card is basically for, I go to a to a lifestyle or wherever I go to any shop, even it could be Food World or something also. So it is more for that usage. So I keep a small amount in my debit card and I use only that much. And then every week, loading the card again. So that way liability is also less. But if you lose your debit card, the banks don't help you. But if you lose a credit card, they are liable to block your card as well as ensure that you don't lose the money. So that has ups and downs.
So that means we should have a separate debit card for expenditure.
Yeah, I do that. So I would really suggest that. And in fact, it helps you be a little more disciplined because not all of us are so disciplined that when we go to a mall, enough a number of us swipe our cards when we don't actually need that item, right? Just because it looks nice, you end up buying. Usha, you and I did that in Israel. So we've done that. I'm sure if we had cash, we would have been a little more careful. But yeah, so it is more a habit related thing.
Thank you.
So in extension to this debit card and credit card, Ritusha has a question. How do we calculate tax on debit card and credit cards?
We'll do the credit card and debit card in our sessions actually, Ritu. So this is a question which we'll take up when we are doing the session. it's a longish thing. You can reach out later also. Vinita will be able to explain it to you better, whatever personal question. Actually, some of you rather have written to me directly. Since I'm talking, I'm not able to take the direct question. But can you write it on email? Then it will be easier for me to reply to you all. One of us will reply. Vinita will reply if it is around loans and planning, goals-based planning and things like that. So we can write back to you whatever questions you have.
So workshop is again virtual workshop, or do you suggest in-person workshop?
We have, thanks to COVID again, the good thing is we've done, like I said, we've done many international sessions also. Because of this, people have accepted the virtual workshops. Earlier, they were not accepting, so we had to physically go. But today we can do virtual sessions. We've done, in fact, over the past, since May, since last May, we've done more than 100 webinars.
Wow.
So, yeah, so we can easily do a session anytime that you want.
Okay.
So, Preeta, members wanted to know about your websites and email address, if you can share with us.
Sure. Shall I email it to you? Shall I just put it here?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. I'll put, so I wanted to tell you all, if all of you are interested in reading a bit more on personal finance, one of the best books to read in the context of India is this book by Monica Hullen, which is called Let's Talk Money. I'll just put it here. The name of the book. It starts with the very basics. And in fact, in our sessions also, we tell people just start reading that and you'll have a lot of doubts clarified, because it's about the Indian context. So it's a very good book to read. And there are various websites also where if you want to read articles and all, there are some very good websites which give you explanations on, say, for example, how do mutual funds work, or how what are the taxes, what are the nominations like, and things like that. There are some good sites like, but don't fill your details anywhere, because then they'll hound you after that. Just go Google it, read it, and exit it. If they ask you for anything, don't fill your details, because again, like any institution, the marketing people will bombard you later. So go to a site called Value Research. They give you some very good. I'll just put that here again. You can go to this, as well as you can also check out. There is Policy Bazaar. There is another site called Bank Bazaar. All these have very good articles, very easy to read. That's why we are suggesting it. There is also Mint newspaper, which gives very good articles, and these are all reliable ones. But it's just that, again, like I said, personal finance is very personal. So ensure that it's what fits you. So just because they give something, mutual fund is good for this mutual fund is giving good returns, doesn't mean it might be good for you. So you need to understand whether it is good for you, and then you can go further. Like we explain mutual funds in detail in our sessions, because a lot of people don't understand mutual funds. So it's not easy for me to quickly kind of say it here. But yeah, all mutual funds are not for everybody. There are certain kinds which are like high risk. People take riskier mutual funds, things like that. Okay, my email ID, yeah. Mine, you can, if you want to write to Anu and Vinita, you just need to change that name.
So I think with this, we finish with a lot of you answering all our queries. Thank you so much, Ms. Preeta, for taking out time to address all our queries. It was definitely an eye-opening session for all of us.
Most welcome, Radhika.
We've got a better insight on how to manage our finances. And we will definitely get back to you and look into, the different websites and books, what you suggested. It would definitely be an asset to all of us.
Yeah, thanks. Lopa says she wants information on our workshop. Do reach out anytime, Lopa. We can all, I can give you my number also, maybe, Radhika. They can reach out to me at the time. I'm happy to, see, we are social entrepreneurs. And like you've seen that we don't sell anything. We are just, main purpose is educational. So we'll be more than happy to conduct sessions for anybody at all. We do sessions not just for women, incidentally. We do sessions for youngsters. So schools, colleges, corporates, women's groups, just about anybody who wants sessions. Senior level managers, people who wanting to plan their retirement, anybody at all.
I'd like to thank Ms. Usha Rani Mane, Chairperson Flow Hyderabad, for bringing this opportunity to our platform. Thank you, Ritusha, and the entire Knowledge Labs committee, Shilpa, Prachi, and Khushbu. A special thanks to Sujita Chityala, Priya Gazdar, and Sarika Burgu for your support. Thank you all the members for joining us today. So let's start today. While planning your personal finances looks like a humongous task, isn't it? All the stakes, just a few hours initially, and then when the systems are in place, one has to just keep adding or deleting the information. Stay tuned for more such meaningful interactions and initiatives from our own Flow Hyderabad. Until then, stay fit, stay safe. Namaskar. Thank you so much, Ms. Preeta Valli.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Preeta and Vinita, Anu. Please convey our thanks to her.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Okay.